Well, good morning, everyone. It is a bit of a chilly morning, but I'm glad you all were able to make it to our fall 2022 economic outlook. How many of you took our pre-event survey? Raise your hand. Don't be shy. Okay. So I've got some results here. All right. So first of all, we asked you to rank your top economic concerns for next year. Number 1 was water, number 2 was cost of living, and number 3 was economic development. I have some news for you. We're going to talk about all 3 of those things today. And then we asked you what you thought were the chances of a recession next year. I know, this is all like uplifting, right? 41 to 60% of you predict that there's going to be a recession next year. I have good news to you. We're going to talk about that and hopefully explain what's going on, maybe alleviate some of your concerns. Now, something that was a little bit more concerning, honestly, was our third question, which was, what year did the UNLV men's basketball win the NCAA championship? And most of you got it wrong. You said 1991. We came close. It was 1990. It was the year that we won men's basketball. Never forget. I want to get some housekeeping out of the way. I want to acknowledge our elected officials in the room. We have Councilman Brian Knutson, Commissioner Justin Jones. We have Regent-elect Heather Brown, Regent-elect Susan Brager. We have City Councilman Isaac Barone, North Las Vegas. And then we have, as well as School Board-elect Irene Bustamante Adams. Would you please stand and let's acknowledge them. Thank you for your public service. I also want to give a special thank you. We have our provost here, Chris Heavey. Chris, thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for everything you're doing for the university. And then I would be remiss if I didn't thank all of our sponsors. All of your support that you give to the Center for Business and Economic Research, it's not just for this event. It's so that throughout the year, we can do original economic research, we can write white papers, we can poll and do surveys and do other types of original applied economics here in Southern Nevada to help our community move forward. It also helps our students. Because of your support, we're able to hire undergraduates, graduates, and give them real-world experience. And those students are in this room today. We have veterans, we have students from overseas, we have first-generation students, and we give them real-world applied experience so that they can go, hopefully stay here, and use those skills to make our community better. So thank you so much for your support. To all our sponsors here in the front, thank you so much. Now, I'm going to turn the mic over briefly to my good friend and eternal optimist, Dr. Bo Bernhard, who is the Vice President of Economic Development, and he's going to talk a little bit about what the university is doing with industry and academia and helping grow our community. Thank you.
Eternal optimist. Good morning. And so if this is the first time you've been back on campus since the last time we had this spectacular event, this is just a gem for us here at UNLV. We've been busy. You may or may not have seen this, but it was interesting. We were having a debate the other day at the cabinet level about whether the engineers or the physicians have contributed more to the expansion of the human lifespan of roughly, let's just call it 80 years. Is it the doctors that have saved us, that have given us good health, or is it the engineers that have built, among other things, sewage systems and things that allow us to stay healthy at more of a macro level? Well, here's the thing about your local university on Maryland Parkway. We're doubling both of those things. Regardless of where you fall on that particular debate, in the past year, one of the things that we've done is we put a brand new beam on the very top of our brand new engineering building, which will literally double in size physically our engineering programs. And that means engineering, of course, a future of tremendous economic diversity. You might have attended, I hope you attended, the opening of our Krikorian Medical Building, which will allow us to double the number of physicians that we are producing here in our medical school. So no matter where you turn, the rebel cavalry is on the way, right? Help is on the way in the form that you hope your local university is producing. Just earlier this week, Chris and I were over at our library next door, the Lead Library, which is just still a stunning, stunning library. We were talking about how we remember when this was our brand new building, and it's still just gorgeous. And we opened at that particular library the region's only U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. As it stood before last Tuesday, you had to go either to Southern California or to Utah or to Arizona. Now, of course, here in your backyard, you have a place if you're an entrepreneur or just somebody with an idea and want to see it realized through the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. One of the really interesting pieces of trivia that came up during that day, when that library next door was built, then President Carroll Harter insisted that it be 1 square foot larger, our new library, than the Thomas and Mack Center. Isn't that cool? For really cool, obviously, sort of symbolic reasons. And that was the case until we built the room that you're sitting in right now. But lo and behold, change, right? Here at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, here in the gorgeous Las Vegas landscape that we can see through our windows, and leading us all throughout, guiding us, is our fantastic gem that is the Center for Business and Economic Research. Our friend Stephen Miller has built this thing into an absolute powerhouse. Our friend Andrew has absolutely transformed the ways in which we engage with the community. This is where you turn for answers, friends, and I look forward, as I know all of you do, for the answers that we will hear today. So with that, I now get to turn this microphone over to Jerry Sanders, our esteemed Dean of the Business School, who will be building the next building here in the near future. Please welcome Dean Sanders of the Lee Business School.
So Bo asked, is it medicine or is it engineering that has extended the lifespan? It's business that has created the wealth that has enabled the investments in medicine and engineering. Okay. Just for the record. So thank you for being here today. I echo Bo's comments that this is one of the gems of UNLV. It is certainly the gem of the Lee Business School. Our centers, we have 3 of them: CBER, LEAD, Center for Real Estate Development, and the Troche Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. These are our community engagement engines. And through these centers, as Andrew mentioned, we enable students to gain real-world experience and access to professionals that can mentor them as they transition into the workforce and become the wealth generators of the next generation. So thank you to CBER for hosting this. As one of the nation's most diverse universities and as a recent R1 Carnegie classification, we play a pivotal role in the economic development of Nevada, and specifically in southern Nevada. As Nevada continues to grow, UNLV will continue to grow. In the short term, strategically, we will grow in the business school more on the graduate side than on the undergraduate side, but the undergraduate enrollment will mirror the growth of the community. But we have a lot of pent-up demand at the graduate level through specialty degrees that I won't go into now, but we have new degrees in analytics, cybersecurity, both partnerships with engineering, because we do get along with others on campus, and some things are best done in an interdisciplinary way. Of course, we also have specialty degrees in accounting and in information systems. And these and some emerging areas are the growth engines for the School of Business at the graduate level. So Bo mentioned new buildings. Imagine for a second you look out that window and the corner is gone right there, and you can see just a little bit to the right at the intersection of Harmon and Tarkanian Way. That will be the home of the new building that will house the Lee Business School. We will be beginning a capital campaign to fund that operation. It's being built entirely through university and philanthropic efforts, no state money, which enables us to do it faster and cheaper. Does give us quite a lift, though, with the community in getting support, but we're anxious to get that started. So why do we need a new building? I don't know how many of you have ever been in the Beam Hall, the home of the Lee Business School. It's a very fine high school building. It's served us well, and I actually like the offices. It has some kind of weird 80s cement charm to it, but what it does not have are some of the critical building blocks of a student's development experience. There is no place for small student teams to meet. There's no place for two students to meet unless you happen to get one of the cement benches in the lobby, which you might fit 50 students there. There are no team meeting spaces. Just as important, it's lacking any place for your firm to come and engage with students. We have to repurpose a classroom or something. There's just no interaction, no, as President Whitfield likes to say, collision space. So this new building will have room for more faculty, but in less square footage than we currently have. That means smaller offices, so that we can give more space to students and the community members. And we're really excited about it. And in the coming months, you'll see us officially launch, and you'll see information, and you'll see us knocking on your door to show you what we're building and to have you help us identify folks for whom this resonates and this is important. Thank you again for coming to this Outlook conference, and I look forward to hearing about why there's not going to be a recession and just how fast the boom's coming again. Thank you, Andrew.
So today marks a very special day for the Center for Business and Economic Research. Today marks 28 years that we have been conducting Outlook. 28 years. Just think. So 1994 was the first Outlook. And it was under my predecessor, Dr. Keith Schwer, and he had someone who helped him a lot on that, and he's here in this room, Bob Potts. And Bob was telling me stories about how they worked up, till midnight, coming up with the slides and getting it all done, and it was at the bottom, actually, in the basement of Beam Hall, in a classroom, was the first Outlook. And here we are, right, overlooking the strip. Here we are today. But let's go down memory lane and talk about the last 28 years. Remember in 1994, the Stratosphere was being built, right? The #1 rated TV show in America was Seinfeld. The average price of a home in the United States was $119,000. Sounds good, right? Of course, the 30-year average fixed rate for a 30-year mortgage was between 8% and 9%. So a bit of a trade-off. The gallon of gas was $1.11. Who would have? That's never come back. Oh boy. And Lake Mead had water. So a lot has changed in 28 years, right? Things are always changing in our community. And you can see that timeline, right? Over the last 28 years, we have been through a lot. We've been through ups, we've been through downs. I mean, one theme that we see when we look in the past, of course, as economists, is we think about recessions, right? And we've been through 3 very distinct recessions. We had the dot-com boom and bust, we had the Great Recession and financial crisis, and we had COVID. Very different recessions. But they had one theme, one thing in common, and that's that they hit our community harder, quicker, faster than the rest of the country. And even to this day, we can see the effects and the impacts in our community. Now, that's looking in the past. Looking ahead, we have exciting things happening. We have Formula One coming next year. We have the Super Bowl coming. We have potentially a Major League Baseball team, other major league sports. We also have this global change happening that is beyond our control, but is happening in terms of a transition to the clean energy future. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today and how that is impacting our community and what that means. Because we shouldn't just be worried about what's going on in the next 3 months. We shouldn't just be worried about what's going to happen in the next year. We should be thinking about the next 28 years and how our community is evolving, what's changing. And that's why we're going to have that kind of conversation this morning and kind of kick things off. Now, you're all here because of Outlook, right? So you know what we do when Outlook happens. We do economic forecasts. But maybe you didn't know, too, we do brews and economic views. We've done 6 of them since I started. And these are more casual conversations between academia and industry. We've done everything from water to biotech to sports economy. And we'll have a whole round of those next year. We've also trained 40 public school teachers to teach economics in the classroom just this year. We've gone through 2 cohorts. It's a new initiative that we've launched. We also have student researchers, as I mentioned earlier. We train undergraduates and graduates in applied economic research so that they can get real-world experience, they can work for all your companies, and they can make a difference in the community. We do original economic research, which is on our website, which we publish publicly. And then we'll talk about this a little later, but we also have what's called the Applied Research Collaborative, ARC, which is funded through the Knowledge Fund, comes through also Bo's Department, Economic Development, as well as through GoEd. And this helps us connect with industry and bring academia on board from sciences and engineering and art, fine arts and hospitality to help diversify our economy. Essentially, to sum it up, the way I think about CBER and our role and our mission in the community is to be a nexus for Nevada when it comes to applied economic research. And wherever we can find that we can use those skills to help the community, we're going to do it. And our motto is data drives ideas that drives change. And it's not just a motto, though, it's a way that we think about the world. Because change is always happening, but if we have the data, then we can help shape and mold the ideas behind that so that we can be a little bit more knowing or reacting to what's coming down the road, such as referencing recessions, right? So that's why you're all here today, to see Outlook, to get that data, right? But we're going to do a little bit of a mental exercise here. I know it's still early in the morning, but we're going to use this theme to actually kind of define something that I think hasn't been defined yet. And that is, can we look at the data and define economic diversification? Can we figure out what is the goal line? We say it over and over and over, but has anyone defined how we know when we have it? So let's first start with the data. Some of you have seen this. Let's see if this flips. Here we go. This is our Clark County population forecast, something we've been doing for 26 years. And this is used by our friends in government, Water Authority, Clark County, RTC, et cetera. And it forecasts, this is updated as of July, this is forecast to say that we're going to have 698,000 more people living right here in Clark County in the next 18 years. To put that in perspective, by the time we're done here at 10 a.m., there'll be 10 new residents living in Southern Nevada. I don't know who they are, but they'll be here, right? 80% of the state's population by 2040 will be right here in Southern Nevada. And we've been doing this a long time. I'm going to put Bob on the spot again. So this is from 2001. This is their forecast. This was Bob, Mary, and Keith. They put this together for the population forecast. At the time, in 2022, they forecasted 2,336,928 people. And then what's interesting that I don't know folks know is to produce the population forecast, we also have to produce employment forecasts and GDP forecasts for the next 40 years. So we're looking ahead as much as we're looking behind. And so they forecasted 1,084,599,000 employees working in Southern Nevada. Guess what? We have 2,375,000 people as of 2022, and we have 1,065,500 people working in the labor, 1,065,900 people in the labor force. Not bad, Bob. Yeah. So why does the forecast matter, though, right? I've already mentioned it's a planning tool, but here's something, too. It can be an economic diversification tool. Because if we can know where our employees are going, how the economy is going to grow over the next 40 years, we can see, A, how good a job are we doing now, and B, can we nudge it along to move along economic diversification, and what areas should we be focusing in on? Basically, having intention. There's that word. If you notice in the invite, I said intention a lot, and that's because that's the theme of Outlook this fall, is intention. Because if we have intention, and we have a vision, and we then drive towards that vision, we can meet it. We have a big year. I've mentioned this, right? We've got Formula One, we have Super Bowl. But we also have this transition, and we also know that the next recession is not a question of if, but when. And really, maybe we shouldn't be talking so much about concerns for next year, but the next big recession. Because the big recession is the one that leaves scars in our community, where we have 30% unemployment. That's abnormal. That isn't common across the United States. That's only here. We have the Great Recession, which had 14% unemployment. That is abnormal. And it costs taxpayers money, it costs workers productivity, it costs businesses profits. It takes longer for us to recover after these major events. And that's why we need to think ahead about diversification and building that resiliency. As my friend Tina Quigley talks about, it's about resiliency. And that is absolutely correct. And we know this to be true because economic research done at the Department of Economics here at UNLV by our best and brightest looked at communities in the Gulf that were hit by hurricanes. And those that were more economically diversified bounced back faster and able to get back on their feet and start making money. They don't have quite the same issues that you see, like we see today with labor shortages and inflation. So diversification, right? And again, that's why we're going to define it here as essentially diversification is how our, from a workforce standpoint, is going to change, and how do we build a workforce in all these different sectors, including the ones we have here, and strengthen them so that we can be more economically resilient towards the next big recession. So we've talked about the data. We're going to use the labor force. Here's the big idea. The big idea is getting to economic diversification. And again, what is that finish line? Because again, I don't know we keep throwing around the word, but I haven't seen someone say, here's the finish line. So to go through down this thought process, we have to make two assumptions. They're big assumptions. One, we have to assume if we're going to have 700,000 more people here, we're going to have enough water. Now, I'm an optimist on this a little bit, and I know that might be, according to the voting in the room, I'm in the minority here. And it's not because I know the Water Authority is here. It's because they've been using our data for 26 years to make decisions and policies and technologies to help us reduce water, which is why we have 1 million more people, and yet we've reduced water by 23%. So I have to assume as long as we do a good job of producing the best possible forecast for the population, they're going to continue to do their job to make sure that all of us have water here for the next 10, 20, 30 years. But again, I know that's a big assumption with the drought and everything that's going on along the Colorado River. But just bear with me. Second major assumption, and I wish my friend John Restrepo was going to be here, but I know something came up, land. Land is a big issue too, right? We know if you're going to add 700,000 more people in southern Nevada, we have to figure out our land issues. I have to assume for this exercise, we will figure it out. Whether that's through density, whether it's through working with our federal delegation for more land, we have to figure it out because we're growing. But for now, that could be an outlook on its own. We're going to assume we figure it out because we have in the past and we have to. Now let's talk about something more fun. Let's talk about pie, right? So I want to use this. Oh, sorry. Break. Okay, is this better for everyone? All right. So let's talk about pie. You can see here that clearly the pie in 2022 is bigger than the pie in 1990. And the pie in 2040 is bigger than 2022. Why am I talking about pie? This is because what I'm talking about is our labor force. Our labor force today is 3 times bigger than it was in 1990, and we're forecasting it to be about 33% bigger in 2040. The pie is constantly growing. But when we talk about economic diversification, we're not talking about the size of the pie, we're talking about the slices of the pie. And how do we slice that pie? But clearly the slice of the pie in 2022 is actually by area bigger than the slice in 1990. Just like the slice in 2040 is going to be bigger than the slice in 2022. So everyone's getting more pie. Let's just be in agreement on that, right? We're all getting more pie as we grow and we add more workers to the workforce. And we forecast this, right? So what does our workforce look like in 2040? Right now, it's right here. So this is our workforce. We have about 1.1 million workers. By 2040, we're forecasting that we'll have closer to about 1.3, 1.4 million workers. Not a lot has changed, though. So food and accommodation is still number 1 in 2040. But notice this, healthcare and social assistance, without any, just based on conditions today, is going to be our second largest sector of labor in southern Nevada by 2040. It's going to happen before 2040. It's going to happen in 2025, according to our forecasts. That is growing on its own. But maybe we can nudge it along and support it, right? You can also see that other sectors are shrinking, such as government. And when I say government, I'm talking about public education because that gets put under there, and other support services for industry. Now, you'll see these scores on the bottom, right? These are Hackman scores. Some of you have heard about these. There's many ways to measure economic diversification, but the popular way that gets brought up is the Hackman score. And it's 0 to 100. Think of grade school. So if you're at 100%, you've got an A and you're perfectly diversified. And then it goes all the way down to, C, D, E, F. So right now, we got a D+, and we're forecasting that by 2040, in terms of economic diversification, we'll be at C-. It's no one's fault. It's just the way things have been. It's the way the slices of pie have been divvied up and where we're going based on these forecasts. Okay, so we are diversifying, but maybe we could be going a little bit faster. Here's where all the jobs are coming from in terms of growth. These are thousands of jobs, so there's not just 42 jobs, it's 42,000 jobs. You can see that food and accommodation and healthcare are going to grow at the same rate in terms of adding the same number of jobs. You can also see that manufacturing is only growing at 3,000 jobs. Construction, 29,000 jobs. Trade, transportation, utilities, 32,000 extra jobs. Real estate, 14,000 jobs. So we're going to be adding these jobs, and the size of this proportion of the circle is the proportion at which it is in our workforce total. So you can see some trends here, though, right? And just looking at these trends of where we can add jobs or where we have the most potential to add jobs to kind of help with the slices of the pie while still growing the pie, because we all want more pie, are these 6. These are the 6 that we think have the most potential for economic diversification in Southern Nevada. First one is professional and scientific services, because you need those services to help other sectors. And we know they're interlinked when we look at the economics of what grows what. You have healthcare, because it's already growing, but what if we nudge it along? We know we have a worker shortage in healthcare. Manufacturing, we know that we've struggled to find manufacturers, but maybe there's ways that we can look at this a little bit differently in terms of high value that don't use a lot of water or land. We have government, and when I say government, I'm talking about education, but we know we have to think about how do we support our workforce in our skill training and make sure that all of you as employers have the workforce that you need to continue to grow and succeed. And then IT, and then you have education services, which is private education, or other services around supporting childcare. So, all right, we've picked those out just like looking at where the growth is. Let's compare ourselves somewhere else and say, what about the most highly diversified metros in Southern Nevada? Where are they growing? What do they look like? What are their economies? So we picked these 13. These are the most highly diversified that are similar in size to Las Vegas. And they have a score of 98.12, so A+, good job. They have like the bumper sticker. It says like, my child is this city. Anyway, so these are those 13, right? And what is the difference with Las Vegas? And this is in terms of our labor force. That's how we're measuring this, right? So they have more healthcare and social assistance. Well, that sounds familiar. They have more manufacturing. They have more trade transportation. They have more professional and technical services. They have more government, public education. They have more education services, so private education. They have more wholesale trade, finance, insurance. So you can start to see a pattern here. The 6 I mentioned, you see them in these most highly diversified metros compared to Las Vegas. Fine, you don't believe that Cleveland is comparable to Vegas. Fine, the weather is better here, I agree. So let's compare it to communities that have very strong leisure and hospitality industry. So we've got San Diego, Honolulu, New Orleans, Orlando. Hackman score 88.8, B+. Okay, passing, it's good. It's a good grade. Anyway, let's pick on the one that has the lowest Hackman score of that group, and that's Orlando, 80.7. Guess what? Professional technical services, healthcare, manufacturing, education services, information, IT, all more than we do in terms of a percent of their workforce. Now, arts, entertainment, recreation is off the roof because that's Disneyland, or Disney World, sorry. Unless we're planning on importing Disney World here, might be an idea, but my point is, maybe that's off the table, but you can see the pattern here of those 6 that I mentioned. They show up not just in our own forecast, they show up in the most diversified, and they show up in leisure and hospitality type communities. And you can be, I think that also proves the point, you can be highly diversified and have a very strong leisure and hospitality industry. So this is where we get from not just going from chance, but to change. So we use the data, we get to the ideas, and now here's the change. Because if we have some intention, we can change, right? We still have to let the market drive things, but we can have some intention of where we want to be in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. This is what Roadmap 2040, as we're calling it, a diversified Las Vegas could look like by 2040. You can see food and accommodation is still the largest sector, but healthcare is a little bit bigger now. It's now 12% of our workforce. You can see that government is at 9.3, again, public education. You can see that education services, private education has also grown. Manufacturing has doubled. And you can see professional and technical services at 6.8%, so it's also grown. This gets us to an 80.2. Yes, a B minus. B minus is passing. But you have to think every point that we move up on the Hackman scale is 1 point lower in unemployment in the next great recession we have. And you have to think about every taxpayer dollar, every dollar of lost productivity, every dollar of, in terms of business profit loss because of how long it takes for us to rebound. We're gaining something back by moving up this scale. So we call this Roadmap 2040. It's just one idea, right? I'm purposely stirring the pot today, to have this conversation about what would it take for us to be economically diversified while still growing the pie. Two things in here. One, we didn't take away a single job from any other industry. So we have the same amount of jobs that we're already forecasting, but we've added some to certain areas that we see that are fastest growing. How did I do that? Because I have to make one assumption here, and it's a big one. It's that we are going to keep our labor force participation rate high in Southern Nevada. Here's something that's concerning. We are expecting 700,000 more people here, but we're only expecting 44% of them to enter the labor force. And if you want to, between pre-pandemic and now, we've lost 30,000 workers out of our labor force participation rate if you look at the way it should have been growing between pre-pandemic and now here in Clark County. That's probably why we're suffering from a lot of these worker shortage problems and you're having a hard time finding workers. Our labor force participation rate was the second highest drop in the country pre-pandemic to today outside of Maine. Maine was the only one that was higher in terms of a state. So we have to make the assumption that we are going to intervene and help recruit workers here who are going to work, who are going to be productive, but also give back to that community. But that means we have to make sure that we train them, we skill them, we give them good jobs, we give them opportunity, and we help them succeed. And that means then we work with our industry. It should be industry-led, right? But then academic and government-supported of how we grow our businesses here in Southern Nevada. And this is, again, the theme of today, intention. When we have that intention, we can stay on the road, we can keep driving in the direction we want to go, but we've got to set that direction too. I know it's like following the North Star, and I know the North Star is not truly north, but it sure is hacking east, south, and west. That's why intention matters, and that's why having a vision matters, and all of us kind of coming to agreement being like, this is the vision, let's execute it. So these are the jobs added through 2040. The bars that are solid are what we were already forecasting. The pattern is what we've added. To put this in perspective, you can say, well, I don't know if I believe you. You can just add jobs. You're just playing around in an ivory tower and master planning the world. Anyway, with healthcare, for example, we know that there are spillovers. When we add 1,000 more healthcare jobs to the community, you actually create another 1,300 in other industries, including manufacturing, professional, scientific, education, and IT. When you add 1,000 jobs in manufacturing, you create another 1,372 jobs in other industries, including healthcare, manufacturing, education, IT. You can see it's an ecosystem. All 6 of these work together. And there isn't just one that we should focus on. It's a whole ecosystem. And that's why it's important if we are going to set this goal of diversification and what that might look like. And again, this is just one vision. It can't just be one thing that we focus on. We have to focus on multiple things, but at least we're pointing in a direction and heading towards it. Now, you might say, I don't believe anything you said. You're just, again, master planning the world. Here are the top occupation gains that come out of our model, regardless of intervention. Everything with an arrow is those 6 that I just mentioned, those 6 industries. Here's GoEd for their top jobs for the next 10 years. Everything with an arrow is those 6 industries. Here's Bureau of Labor Statistics. Everything with an arrow, and this is for the next 10 years, is those 6 industries. So it's not just us that we're seeing this. It's GoEd, it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics. These jobs are going to grow. Are they going to grow in Nevada? I hope so. Now, I know I can come up here and pontificate and show you a bunch of stuff and say, let's go do it, hurrah, see ya next year. we don't just walk the walk, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. And that's why working with the knowledge from the state, with GoEd, with Bo over at Economic Development, we started the Applied Research Collaborative. And what that is to bring industry and academia together to work together on not only commercialization opportunities, but to go after federal funding. Let me put some numbers here. There is $635 billion coming out of the federal government over the next 5 to 10 years in clean energy. $635 billion. That doesn't include the private investment over the next 10 years, which is another $4 trillion. That is 9 times more. If we get 1% of that, if Nevada just gets 1% of that investment here in our state, that is 1%. 1%. If we just get 1%, that is 9 times what we get from the federal government in a year in terms of transfers and all these other things that we receive from the federal government. 9 times that amount. If we just get 1% of that, $4.635 trillion. It's also 50% more than the state budget. That's how big this transformation is happening. And again, if we have some intention, and this is where we're trying to help, is that we can connect and work with partners like the CEOs in this room who are going to come up here and talk about this panel on clean energy, help them build that dream, help them invest in their company and their people, and be a partner with them so that we can also help our community grow and diversify, because this is where we see the dollars, this is where we see the pathway for diversification. And so CBER has been working on this, and we've proud to have already submitted for a $180 million Economic Engines grant for development in hydrogen and lithium. And then we also are working with our friends at Air Liquide, which is announced today, on the $8 billion hydrogen hubs grant for 6 to 8 hydrogen hubs, which the largest facility in the world, one of them for hydrogen, is here in North Las Vegas. But I'll let them talk about that. Anyway, so you can see these are the things that we're thinking about at the Center for Business and Economic Research, and we do a lot. But the point is to put this out there. Yes, we're stirring the conversation, but to not just think about the past 28 years, but start thinking about the next 28 years. And what does our community look like? Where we're going? How do we set some intention behind our actions and grow this community, and also make sure that we're more resilient for the next recession? Because I hope we don't just, again, I hope that there's someone on this stage in 28 years, maybe by 2040, and they'll be like, there was some guy in 2022 who came down here and he said, this is how we're going to diversify the economy, and guess what? We got to a B-. And now we're going to go for an A+, because look at where we are today. That's what I'm hoping from this, right? And that we continue to have these conversations, that we move forward, and that we diversify this economy. And yeah, maybe we shouldn't just think of ourselves as the silver state, we start thinking of ourselves as the clean energy state. Thank you for your time. I'd like to invite now my good friend Tina Quigley in our panel to the stage, who's going to talk about clean energy manufacturing.
Wow, I am so proud of that presentation that you gave, Andrew, and I think that you probably still will be here in 28 years, and you will be the Bob Potts of 28 years from now. Bob, I remember when you came up, where's Bob? I remember when you came up with those numbers. So anyway. That was really, seriously, Andrew, that was a great presentation. I'm inspired. I love the intentionality that you sent with that presentation. And I'm very excited that we now are following up with this conversation. So I'm not going to do your bios because I don't want to take up too much time. As I ask questions, I'll kind of introduce who you are. But what I really want this group, so this is a really neat group to be able to address, and I'll tell you why. Because these are the people who care about Southern Nevada, the people who can promote Southern Nevada. And I have to say something. I'm going to change my vernacular right now just to test it out on you. I'm going to start calling us the Greater Vegas Region. And we're testing that out within the LVGEA because other metropolitan areas in the economic development world are generally the greater Phoenix area, the greater Sacramento area, et cetera. So we can test that out for a couple reasons because it makes more sense in economic development world. But also, I want to see if we can't slowly but surely kind of start to transition ourselves away from this north-south conversation that we have so much within our state and truly start to focus on just kind of the regions and their uniqueness. So It's a great opportunity to talk to the greater Vegas region of people who care, are smart, and can repeat what they hear if they understand what they're hearing, and can help set intentionality and policy moving forward. So as you address this audience, make sure that your messages are clear, that they can understand it, and they're repeatable, so that they can be some of the greatest promoters that you've got moving forward. Deal? All right. So let's see. Ron, I want to start with you. I'm sorry, Howard. Howard Trott is the CEO of Aries North America. And if I was to just do it in a sentence, it says that Aries North America is an advanced gravity-fed rail energy storage system being built in Southern Nevada. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So we're taking technology that's been around for 100 years, and we're just like a hydro dam, we're using differential of elevation, which is energy, right? Potential energy. So think about the water flowing from high to low, a little lower these days out there, but moving that and turning a crank, turning a motor that generates energy. We're doing the same thing. We're just basically taking what looks like a kind of a trailer or a chain that drives all the cars up to things. So think of a roller coaster. We roll up, the chain grabs us, it pulls a big heavy weight up and stores it up in the flat. So that's now potential energy. So I guess you can see that. So up there, so you think about that, and then now it's stored. Then you say, oh, we've got the need for energy, we roll it backwards. So it's just like a hydro dam, then we're turning the motor the opposite way, becomes a generator, and comes down. So highly efficient, so 90%, when somebody gives us power, we'll give them 90% of it back. So highly efficient, lasts forever, doesn't use water, all the kind of things. It has attributes that the grid needs, so we invert power when we take DC power and we make it AC. We do that by a sine wave and conversion, but the whole grid is made on inertia too. So we add a lot of features that kind of make the real power that we depend upon to keep the grid going for all.
Has this been done before?
Yeah, I mean, it's done with pump hydro all the time, so you hear about that. We're just doing it without water. So our mass is a concrete block. It's on-site aggregate. It's all those kind of things that make the mass.
And you are not new to environmental sustainability projects. I understand that you were part of the conversion of James Island, a 780-acre island in the Gulf of British Columbia, to model an environment, as a model of environmental sustainability. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I had fortunate to work for a very successful family that did a lot of things environmentally. So we did everything you can imagine we did some really early electric cars. We had electric golf carts. We had electric ice cream cart. I've been in energy and environmental my whole life. I started in solar when a panel cost you $2.80 a watt. Now they're under 40 cents. So, when you think about the evolution, and people would say, oh, those electric cars, they don't make any sense. Now every manufacturer is making an all-electric car. So we're coming into a time that all of us out here are going to have to be successful in our way, individually contributing to how do we take a supply chain of gasoline and other biodiesels and all those things, and then turn it to electricity. So all those things are going to be really important for us to be successful.
Absolutely. Jim, let's go to you. So Jim Hodge is a vice president of power sources at Lithium Battery Limited, which is located right here in Henderson, and I've had the opportunity to tour the facility, learn a little bit more about the company. But can you share with the group what you are doing right here in Southern Nevada?
Yeah, so Lithion is building a cell manufacturing facility out in our...
Oh, shoot, I said Southern Nevada. I meant greater Phoenix area. Sorry, it's bad. It's going to take some time. Greater Vegas.
Yeah. So...
It's going to take, I said it's going to take some time.
And we're located in the greater Vegas area, not Phoenix. But.
Okay, the greater Vegas area.
And this is a picture of the facility we're putting together out in Henderson. This is going to be the only cell manufacturing facility of its kind outside of China, which makes it rather unique.
Oh, speaking of the mic for that, because that's powerful.
Yeah, so and we expect to be fully operational sometime in 2023. Anyone who's been involved in construction lately knows how big an issue the supply chain is. And so we'll come back to that later. But, so when we're in operation here, we're going to be building roughly 100 megawatt hours of cells per year, which is tiny by some of the reports you hear of people building 40 gigawatt hour factories for EVs. But we're in this facility, we're going to be focused on some smaller energy storage applications, some highly specialized applications in the military and aviation and medical fields. We're in the process of doing site selection for a larger facility that's going to be about 4.5 gigawatt hours per year, that's going to be focused entirely on energy storage and energy storage systems from anywhere from residential up to grid level energy storage.
Thank you. All right, Katie, let's go to you. So Katie Ellett, President of Air Liquide Hydrogen Energy and Mobility of North America. And I'll let you know that Katie holds a Master of Chemical Engineering as well as an MBA. So, you know, I'm sure your parents are like, God, I hope she does something with her life, right? So, I'm so curious, I just got to ask, how many women were in the chemical engineering program?
There were probably about 20 of us, I would
Yeah.
say, when I started. We had about 100 in the class, 100, 150 maybe. So not a lot of women
Yeah.
in it to begin with, but that's growing, and very happy to see that happening.
So tell us about Air Liquide and the project that you've got.
Yeah, we are so proud of this project, actually. We built the world's first world-scale mobility plant with hydrogen, liquid hydrogen, in North Las Vegas. And so for those of you who aren't familiar with hydrogen, really I think of hydrogen as a chemical battery, in that you can create hydrogen using the natural resources that you have available. You can store it and then deploy it for different energy applications, such as mobility. So that plant specifically is used to power fuel cell electric vehicles, which a fuel cell vehicle uses hydrogen to produce electricity on board. So it is a fully electric vehicle, but it has a different feed mechanism than your typical grid.
And tell us about the grant that Andrew was mentioning for the hydrogen hub, being the hydrogen hub. What is a hydrogen hub?
Yeah, that is also a really exciting program. Andrew talks about the federal money available for converting to green energy, and this is, I think, one of the most exciting. It's honestly one of the most exciting times to be alive, and because we're really witnessing this once in a lifetime type of opportunity to be a part of this green transition, and the government is supporting it from manufacturing to end use applications, and Nevada is poised to really be able to claim a great position in this. So we worked with local partners here, which were fantastic. I will say that's one of the best competitive advantages that you have right here, is just a can-do attitude, a willingness to make things work. It's been amazing. So we worked with local entities here, the governor's office, RTC, the University of the UNLV here, and partnered with Arizona actually to pull together a formidable application to compete on the federal scale for dollars right here. These hydrogen hubs are, the government has said they're going to try to build 6 to 10 hydrogen hubs around the country to be able to facilitate this conversion to green energy.
Thanks, Katie. All right, Lisa. So a lot of us know you. You have been with GoWin now, the Governor's Office of Workforce, or Innovative Workforce. All right, I know.
Thank you.
I'm terrible at those things. But we know you, of course, because you served some time with NCHI, and then you've been the head of the Alumni Association for UNLV. You've been around for quite a bit. But I think what we really need to understand here right now is, what is GoWin?
Yeah, so, well, first off, anyone who thinks that Nevada isn't poised to be the head of clean energy, look at the great companies that we have, not coming to Nevada, but they're already here. So thank you very much for choosing Nevada to be your home. The Governor's Office of Workforce and Innovation, similar to the Governor's Office of Economic Development. So GoEd, and we've got our Deputy Director, Bob Potts, and a whole team here. They focus on that infrastructure piece for investment, right? So they work on attracting the companies, all the connectivity issue, the site location. They work with the RDAs. At the Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation, we focus on that workforce development piece, right? Because all of these companies, in the end of the day, hopefully are hiring Nevadans to work at their facilities. That can mean a lot of different things. That can mean engineering degrees, 4 years. It can also mean more non-traditional, like short-term training programs. So at GoIn, we try to meet with the private sector as much as we can, listen to the business needs, and then work with our educational training partners to identify what those programs look like.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's going to be a very essential part of economic development moving forward, is doing exactly that.
If there is one line that everyone in this room can repeat, we have to invest in workforce development.
Okay, I'll repeat that, I
Thank
promise.
you.
So I want to talk about why you chose the greater Vegas area for locating your business. This is really important to us. As we go out and try and help you grow your business, we need to understand why you located here. And then as we try to attract industries that will be suppliers or supplement your businesses, we need to know what assets we have that would be attractive to them. So can you share with us, Katie? I'll start with you.
Sure. I've been in the chemical industry, manufacturing industries for my entire career. And funny enough, we all have the same chemistry and physics principles to start from. No company has an advantage there. But what it really, that difference really is people, I will say, the willingness to get.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to emphasize, because I hear that regularly. If I could just emphasize for the audience, one of the things that we hear when we're out talking with companies that have located here or thinking about locating here is they love the community attitude of the fact that we can get stuff done. They love the fact that they have access to policymakers, to elected officials, even to our governor's office, to workforce partners. So I just want to emphasize that so that we continue to leverage and grow that aspect of who we are. So thank you, Katie.
Yeah, so I think there's a real hunger here. There's a real willingness to do that, to do new and innovative things, coupled with natural resources that are actually quite a competitive advantage. I say natural resources and man-made resources. Actually, we talked this morning about the tourism center that you have here, the international airport. The accessibility actually gives you a great competitive advantage. So the combination of those things, the can-do attitude, the natural resources, and your man-made advantages here are fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. How about you, Howard?
Well, solar energy is probably the biggest
Solar?
reason we're here.
Say that again?
Solar energy. So when you think about renewables and the solar signature you guys have, and being the center of what I see as the hub of solar generation. When I started our first project we permitted years ago, it was 100 megawatts. It was one of the biggest in the United States. Now the stuff, if you're not a gigawatt, you're nothing. And you think how many gigawatt solar farms are being constructed and permitted in this state. So when we looked at it and say, well, look, we've got Southern Utah, great signature, Arizona, and supply chain, and then we have California, which is a great demand for renewable energy. Having a place that's open, we can meet with anybody here. It's like a small town that's a big city. Mm-hmm. And we get to talk to people, we get permitting, all those kind of things that we need to build very large projects. So our projects start at $100 million and go to a couple $2 billion. So when you think about that, you have to locate in a place that's going to be supportive of that and allows us to work from here to hit Arizona and Utah and all these other places we have.
So
projects.
Proximity to other major metropolitan areas.
You're right in the center.
Transportation, access.
Yeah, I mean, somebody used the gateway for renewable energy. It really is.
Ooh,
right
I like
here.
that. Yeah, gateway. That's good. Okay. All right, Jim.
Yeah, it's probably not well known, but there has actually been a battery industry in southern Nevada for,
Greater Vegas area?
yeah, for going on 30 years now. And I moved to the area in 2001 and worked for a battery company and a cell manufacturing company. And so really Lithion chose this area to put up our facility just because it was a center of knowledge and expertise in both cell and battery manufacturing. Obviously, the other advantages there have been mentioned in terms of it's being a logistics center. We're 4 hours from the Port of Long Beach if you're importing either raw materials or equipment. McCarran Airport is like painfully easy to get to and fly in and out of, and that's a huge advantage even if you're not coming here for tourism.
One of the things that you mentioned on our tour, too, was the humidity level, that it was actually an advantage to have lower humidity levels for your particular manufacturing.
Absolutely. The lithium-ion manufacturing process, cell manufacturing process is sensitive to moisture. So everyone who builds a facility like that has to do all the assembly in a dry room environment, which is expensive to operate. But if you're if the normal environment is 10 to 15% humidity normally, you cut your operating costs significantly by locating in an area in low humidity.
So we got to add that to our marketing material, right? Low humidity. Yeah. And not to keep going on this, but one of the things that when I toured with you again, and for those of you who are with associations or chapters of different organizations and you're looking for a place to take your team, your organization to go tour to learn more about what's going on in the greater Vegas area, I recommend you get a hold of Jim and go tour his facility in terms of advanced manufacturing. It really is interesting to see what they're doing right here in Henderson. One of the things that you shared with me, and I want to clarify to make sure I understand, is that even though we mine lithium here, that it doesn't necessarily mean that it can be processed here and that you can actually use it. Even though it's mined here, it still needs to be shipped to China for processing and then is shipped back here for actual manufacturing. Am I correct?
So Lithion and our cell manufacturing operation is not a direct consumer of lithium hydroxide or lithium carbonate, which is what the refined product is coming out of mines. So it has to be converted to our cathode material, which is lithium iron phosphate material, or other cell manufacturers are using converting that lithium into nickel, metal, cobalt oxide types of cathode materials. All of that processing, I think the numbers I've seen recently are that 95 to 99% of the cathode material in the world is being synthesized in China right now. So there are a number of companies that are building their own plants in the U.S. To manufacture cathode material just because of the huge demand that's going to be existing here. But we're talking 3 to 4 to 5 years out before those sort of operations come online.
And are any of those operations in the state of Nevada?
There's a company in the Bay Area that is currently looking at a potential site in Nevada, but I haven't heard of any.
All right, we got to get with Bob Potts and Go Ed and make sure that we get them located here, right?
Yep.
Okay, all right, good. All right, let's move on. Howard, so tell me more about the project itself, and will there be supplemental or ancillary companies that will be interested in locating in Greater Vegas area as a result of your project, and what would those companies be?
Yeah, so we're a technology, so obviously we've invested in a very fancy laser that we have just a few miles from here that's producing our steel products, steel made in the USA, recycled in the USA. So, so we've done that from a technology. So other supply, Haas Machinery, I think, is going to put some more stuff. We have Haas machines, so that's a big support to us to have more technology here local, just down the street in Henderson. But we're also a project, so we do the whole thing. So we do permitting, we actually construct the facility. So, you know, we have, some projects will have 9 billion pounds of concrete. So we have to attract people to supply the concrete, the cement, they'll do a lot of it on site. So as we do that, so we're actually a construction company too. So we may have other construction companies. We've got large EPCs that are interested in doing this that could locate here. We also have transmission. So we're doing the whole thing. So we're technology, we're building our device, but we're also building the project. And as I said, these are very large projects, stuff that are about half the size of Boulder Dam that's proposed. So something very large. So it brings a lot of ancillary jobs here, and it'll be all over the state, north and south.
So even post-construction, so once you're operational, what type of suppliers, companies do you hope choose to locate within a close proximity of your project in order to make your business easier to grow and operate?
So we'll be around for, we hope, 100 years,
Sure.
right? So this is something that's made out of concrete and steel. So, but it's, mechanical in nature. So we have bearings, we have bushings, we have lubricants, we have lots of things that we, when we talk about how many bearings we have, the bearing companies all listen. So we hope that they'll come here and produce that, because we may have 1 million bearings in some of our things. So that's our only moving part in our mass, and we've got lots of
So
them.
bearings, so you need some bearings. All right,
We
add
need
that
lots
to the
of
list,
bearings.
Bob Potts.
There you go.
Bearings.
Get us a bearing
Just
manufacturer.
kidding. All right, Katie, how about you? So really excited to have you here in the greater Vegas area. I think that between the three of you, we've got hydrogen, we've got storage, we've got lithium. We are really rounding ourselves out. And your facility is just so obvious as you're driving along that I-15 that you can't help but look over and go, that is some progress. So tell me about the types of industries that you think your project will start to attract as well and help grow this industry.
Yeah, thanks for that. It really is a beautiful facility.
It is.
Actually,
it looks like something
my
from the
kids laugh at me
Jetsons.
when I say, it's a beautiful plant. It really is a beautiful plant. It's funny, but the other thing that I do tell my kids is, when you take a step forward, when you open a door, generally what that means is that you end up with many, many doors, more
Correct.
doors open. You end up with more options in front of you. And that's exactly what we've seen. We invested over $250 million in that project on the northern side of the greater Vegas area, right? And there was nothing really, there wasn't an industrial facility there at that point in time. So we had to invest fairly heavily in the infrastructure in the facility. And what we've seen since then is many other companies are following behind to build in that location, which is fantastic. But Andrew mentioned this morning really building out an ecosystem, and that's what we need really for conversion to this green energy environment. Hydrogen for mobility specifically, fueling infrastructure, heavy-duty trucking, the trucks and the maintenance, the workforce development to maintain those things. We have to build that ecosystem out to be able to support that transition going forward. And we're really fortunate, I think, to have great partners here to do that.
Well, we are excited to be your partners, and we are excited to bring in these other industries that will help you in your primary industries. So, Lisa, one of the things they're going to need is workforce. Talk to us about how you have conversations with these people here and the industry as a whole to make sure that we are pumping out the pipeline of employees that they need to feel confident in growing and in attracting these other businesses.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. So, Jim, I think it was a conversation we had a couple months ago when we were talking about your facility and just what that workforce dynamic looks like. And you mentioned about 10% are engineering, traditional route, and about the other 80-90% are more machinists and operators. Don't necessarily require a 4-year degree, right? So we're really focused on that cultural shift of higher education. What does that look like? At the Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation, we really focus on these short-term training programs, 6 to 9 weeks. We recognize that we have a workforce here. It's kind of two parts. We have a pretty high group of people who are not participating in the labor force that we're trying to kind of figure out how we can pull them back in so that we can get them engaged. But the second piece is retraining our workers, right, so that they can fit the mold that you're looking at. One of the partnerships that really comes to mind, and Tina, I think this is the future, if you will, on how we can do these collaborative partnerships, is you mentioned Haas, the manufacturing facility in Henderson. They partnered with CSN. When Haas first came to Nevada, they said, okay, what community college in the state is offering some kind of advanced manufacturing program? And at the time, Truckee Meadows Community College was the only community college across the state that had some kind of manufacturing program. TMCC, of course, is located in Washoe County. So Haas Peter over at Haas worked with CSN, they worked with the City of Henderson, they worked with GoEd, GoWin, all of these different partners, of course, LVGEA, and they just recently launched their CSN Center of Excellence, all to build the workforce of advanced manufacturing in Southern Nevada, which is not just going to be particular to the needs for Haas, but very much universal for what that advanced manufacturing footprint looks like. So we are working on it. We definitely hope to have a little bit more state support in terms of funding. Right now, a lot of our workforce development investment relies heavily on federal dollars, which is great. We need to do everything we can to bring more federal dollars into the state. We know that. But for the intention piece that Andrew spoke about, we definitely need to build this out and scale it up a little bit more.
Great, thanks. So I actually want to go now to you guys to, if you could, think about the workforce needs that you have where you are right now and as you're growing. Tell us very specifically what worries you in terms of being able to fill positions, or as you grow, as your companies grow, what positions do you need and what are you worried about as it relates to our education as a supply source? Katie.
So manufacturing technology is a specific skill set, right?
Okay.
There are things that you need to learn to be able to handle chemicals
Now,
safely.
is it specific to your industry, like the proprietary systems of your industry? Is it a training, or is it a degree or a certificate?
There are, I would say it's not that specific. I mean, there are specific things that you need to learn about any manufacturing facility that you work in, but there are general principles and concepts, and there are associate's degrees and certificate type of training programs that help prepare a workforce for that. We are very willing to help in those sorts of things, and on-the-job type of training as well. We have about 130 employees across Nevada, and we need welding support. We need truck drivers. We need a full range of engineering, technical, mechanical type of workforce. And so to be able to grow that again, to develop refueling infrastructure. We're going to need technicians trained to be able to manage cryogenics and those sorts of things that are specific skill sets.
And are you in conversations with our workforce development training programs? And I know you're talking with Lisa, but our higher education systems as well.
Yes, and
Yeah.
actually I think that's one of the wonderful benefits of the hydrogen hub thing, is because again, it makes you look at that ecosystem and how you bring all of those pieces together to make that happen. So yes, we have those conversations ongoing now, but we're absolutely interested in furthering those.
Okay, great. I'll let the audience know, as part of economic development, one of the things that I've learned is that when a company is looking to grow or relocate, the first thing that they need, of course, is a footprint. They need land. But the thing that is most important to them is, where am I going to get my workforce? How do I know I'm going to have a pipeline of employees that I can draw from? So I share that with you only because as I ask these questions, it's really, ears are perked up, really important for us to understand, what do you need? So Howard, what do you need as your project prepares to operate? What are you going to need in terms of employees and workforce and training?
So we're so diverse because we're so vertically oriented. So, when you think of construction, machine operators, lots of technology in those these days, right? We're using drones to figure out our cuts and fills. So when we do dirt work, so drone operators, survey people, construction workers, laying concrete, all these kind of things. Plus, then we have the manufacturing business side, which is, we have a $2 million laser that cuts steel as fast as you can imagine inside an environment that's all enclosed. So somebody that can program, that can understand. To engineers, so structural, we spend a lot of time with dirt. Permitting, so when we think about, we use a local permitting firm, we have to have biologists, we have to have all that. So you name it, we need it.
Okay. And are you in conversations as well with our
We have.
workforce training facilities and our higher ed systems?
We have. We've been very focused on being quiet and getting our first project to
Sure.
go, because everybody says, well, this is really great, but we hear about a lot of these technologies
That
and
is
they
true.
never happen.
Yes.
right?
Welcome to the
Like,
greater
Yeah,
Vegas
it-
area. We've all been,
So we've taken the low, quiet approach and haven't been very public. We're hopefully finished first quarter our project, and we can show it to people, show how it works, show how we made it. We have a very nice facility to tour. that's been our focus, but we've definitely, GoEd is very helpful. They gave us some tax incentives that helped us be a little more competitive. We're not used to tax on manufacturing machinery, so they were very helpful in that, so they took care of our problem, which was wonderful. So, yeah, we need it all, and we have had good conversations. We will have lots more.
Okay, good.
Because we are now working on the pipeline of a lot of projects that will require a lot of people.
Well, I love so far, and Jim will be the same. One of the definitions of a prosperous economy is one where the wages are, the average state wage or the average regional wage is constantly increasing. And the jobs that you're talking about are higher skill, higher wage jobs, of course, which require more education, but very excited about these types of jobs and helping us grow and become a more prosperous economy. So Jim, talk to me about, you've been here for a while, talk to me about workforce. How do you get your workforce? Do you work with our workforce training groups, higher ed, in making sure that you have a pipeline of employees that you need?
Well, yeah, and
Or are you struggling? Are you struggling with getting employees?
Not so much. I mean, there's been, a lot of activity in the battery industry, in the country, and a lot of interest in people, transferring into what's obviously a growing industry. So I've hired a core of engineers who are my process engineering team that is working very well. We're going to need to expand, obviously. And, the cell manufacturing process is fairly complex, so there's a need for chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, and all stages of that process. And it really, the diversity is what the, of skill sets that's needed is kind of the challenge in terms of identifying where those people are and how to bring them in.
Yeah, okay. So we are going to want to have more conversations with this industry as it relates to the skill sets that they need, because that's exactly the type of industry that we want to continue to grow, right?
And to Jim's point, it's very diverse, right? I was talking to Panasonic with GoEd actually a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about the four-year traditional route with engineering. And they said, don't look at an engineering degree, and I don't know if we have Dean Rama here from UNLV's College of Engineering Department, but he said, don't look at engineering and think that every single degree is transferable. Civil is not the same as mechanic. There's a bit of a hierarchy in the field, but they were talking about how there's one specific type, and I think it's production engineering that doesn't necessarily have a focus right now in Nevada, and we got to figure out how we're going to scale that up. And another piece of this is micro-credentials, right? So if you have someone who graduated from UNLV or UNR in an engineering degree, and I'm looking at all of you because you're the experts in this, so tell me if this is wrong, but if we've got folks who are already in the community who have an engineering degree and we're trying to figure out how to place them in these certain areas, and that's not necessarily what their four-year showcase, maybe they can get a micro-credential, they can go back, that way they're better equipped and prepared. So all of that, we're trying to be innovative and figure out. Going back to what you said earlier, we ask you not to be shy because we are not the experts, right? You are, and we need to reflect what your needs are, and we need to respond to that. So I would say, if there's a company in the room that has a workforce issue, don't be shy. We really do need to hear from you.
Amen. And I know that Workforce Connections, Jaime and Irene and that group have been holding these industry sector partnerships to pull in the 7 different industries verticals to ask them specifically, what do you need moving forward? I think the state as a whole recognizes that the only way we are going to grow, and particularly in this industry, is to make sure that we are pumping out the workforce that you need and you can feel confident. And that, as well as making sure you've got supply chain to keep you growing and healthy. So I know we're out of time, just about out of time, and so I just wanted to real quick see if the audience had any questions. Is there anything that I didn't get to that you'd like to know? Yes. Oh, hi, Dave.
From our side,
Did he just ask which one of you is the best?
we're all needed, I can guarantee you
Cheapest, I
that.
should have known. He's a broker, yeah.
We're all going to be needed. I mean, when you think my whole life, energy consumption's been going down because of all these things. Now they say it's going to go up by 300%. And there's not enough wires to make that happen. So we're all going to have to be really successful to keep up with the demand for electricity. For Mars, we look at levelized cost of storage, and we're sitting about half of, depends on how you figure it, those calculations are always a little goofy, but about half the cost of what we would say lithium would cost. But that's in really large scale and really long duration. So 12, 24 hours is what we're looking at. So that's part of why per kilowatt hour we're so good. Batteries serve many other great needs that will fill the other void. But so we believe we're doing a study with a group right now about replacing a coal plant. And you say, well, how can you do that if you don't generate energy? Well, we're going to take energy from multiple states and be able to hold it for people and give it back to when they need it. So we see, obviously, we think we're very cost effective, and we're going to show that. But it is in a certain sector, which is long duration storage.
Anyone else? Okay, back there. Oh, it's Phil.
All right, in this energy sector, who's not in the greater Vegas area that you all can help Tina bring to the greater Vegas area?
That's a great question.
I'm for bearings and steel.
Bearings and steel, okay, we got a list.
I'll second that, actually. So a lot
Bearings
of
and steel.
Well, a lot of the maintenance, the mechanical elements that we need for running our plants, we have to hotshot from California and from other locations, and having some of those
No,
things
that
locally
cannot continue to happen.
would be very beneficial, honestly. So
Okay.
being able to develop that sort of mechanical infrastructure would be quite helpful.
Thank you. Later, we'll dig deeper into that. Okay. Jim.
I already touched on it a little earlier, is like battery materials are, obviously a critical part of our supply chain, and it's all coming from China right now. So anything in terms of electrolyte, cathode material, graphite for anodes, porous membranes for separators, we'd be more than happy to have them located in the greater Vegas area.
Okay, all right, we got a list going. Phil, that was a great question. Are there any more great questions out there? Yeah.
I think Bill Arendt had a question.
With regards to infrastructure in this area, how important will I-11 and the Ivanpah Airport be to expanding your businesses?
Well, I think it's a tremendous advantage that you have here. The airport infrastructure, the ease of getting in and out, the interstate, the corridor access to other major metropolitan areas is a tremendous advantage here too. We build here primarily at the moment to serve the California mobility market, because that is where the hydrogen mobility market is located, and so that ease of access is absolutely critical. But that infrastructure will grow. It will grow well beyond California. It will develop here, and it'll develop outside. And we want to be able to manufacture here and serve this area, and also export to other neighboring states. So I would say that's critical, to have the infrastructure along those interstate systems.
Any other?
Projects all up and down the state, so anything that improves in-state movement, it's surprisingly hard to get to Reno for me for projects. So any of that stuff is really helpful, and we will be in the middle of nowhere with a lot of our projects, so we're going to have to move around quite a bit in the state. So.
Right. Jim, how about you?
As I said earlier, we have a really good connection, obviously, to the ports in Southern California. What we don't have here in Las Vegas, I think, is easy access to the eastern seaboard and the eastern market. So an I-11 connection between Las Vegas and even just I-40 and I-10 would be a big deal.
Okay, thanks. I will tell you that transportation access is one of the top things that companies tell us is a reason that why they consider moving to their company to the greater Vegas area is McCarran Airport. The fact that we have so much direct service all around the world, a population of 2.5 million people does not justify an airport of our size with the number of destinations that it goes to. And then the other thing is just the access between the ports and the ports of Long Beach and LA, and then also Phoenix, Salt Lake, et cetera. So transportation access is one of the assets of our geographical region. I know that we are out of time, but I think Bill Arendt had a question, and because he works for me, I have to let him ask it. Just shout it out, Bill.
We heard from Andrew at the outset, land, water, talent is three long-term challenges. We talked about talent this morning. I'm curious for your.
Yeah, you're on.
Shut up. For land and water, are there any constraints for growing your operations here in Las Vegas with any infrastructure concerns? Just your current operations and future growth, any infrastructure concerns growing here in Las Vegas?
I mean, for us to be honest about it, we are. I think we developed out in in the northern Vegas area, and that infrastructure around us built up, or the other companies built around us probably faster than we anticipated doing. So it does inhibit our expansion somewhat, and so we're already looking at how can we do that, because we do want to grow and develop here. Water for us is absolutely a critical issue. We understand. I mean, we're trying to build a sustainable future, right? So using our water resources sustainably is quite important to us. So building our processes in a way that minimize that water consumption.
Thank you.
And that we work with the cities specifically to understand how to minimize that in periods of of outage and that sort of thing is going to be critical going forward, honestly.
Thanks. How about you? Water?
Yeah, water, obviously, we've focused on not using any. So even in our manufacturing, we don't use water. So we do, when we make cement, and keep dust down. But other than that, we don't consume water. That's one of our big features, right? If you think about our challenges going forward, energy and water to me are kind of the same thing. And if we can make energy, we can make water lots of different ways. So, if we can find these renewable sources to be able to create energy, that's the most important, but we've really focused on not doing it. Land for us is a lot is BLM, other things. So when we think about, again, we're two-tiered, we think about projects and building on here. A lot of our stuff is way from here. Manufacturing, it's been wonderful, very plenty of stuff. If we can get more manufacturers here to help us, that'd be great, but we're in pretty good shape.
Okay. Jim, anything land, water concerns?
Our cell manufacturing process is not a big water consumer. I think our employee break room uses more water than our
And we don't care about that. You can run that all day long, 24 hours a day. It just goes right back to Lake Mead and comes back, less than 1% shrinkage, not a problem.
So, land is kind of an issue. I mean, not for us. We've got our own building right now. But as we look to expand, battery manufacturing is, you're going to be making very large buildings, and so land costs are something, as we do our site selection work, is something we obviously look at very, very carefully.
Great. All right, we are done. Thank you so much, panelists. This was really interesting, and I am excited about the future of this industry here in the greater Las Vegas area. So thank you. Thanks. Here he comes. So Ken Heck is the CEO of Heck Wealth Management and the president of the Economics Club of Las Vegas, which I think you founded, didn't you? Yeah, so come on up.
Come on, I'm going to have you sit in this seat. Sure. And good to see you. Thank you. Tina, great job. I've been asked to sit here. You can sit wherever you want. You can sit closer to me, that's all right. All right, so good morning, everybody. Now, huh? Good morning. Good morning, Ken. All right, so I guess the meat and potatoes of why we're all here is what's going on with the economy, right? We're all pretty nervous about inflation. We're all pretty nervous about recession. That's right, I said it. We're all pretty nervous about labor shortages. Good news, we have Andrew Woods from CBER and Dr. Steve Miller from CBER and UNLV. And we're going to get hopefully some good answers to these questions. So who's got the clicker?
I do.
All right, well, let's get rolling.
Yeah, and I just want to just clarify too. So we do a quarterly forecast. This is our time series forecast, but twice a year we release this for Outlook, and sponsors get this every quarter. But this is anyway. That's how we put it together, and it's updated every quarter.
So typically, we would put up the slide after slide and run right through it, but in an effort to make it more approachable and more usable, we thought we'd turn this into a fireside chat. No fire. Yeah. All right, so right now, let's get started. And there's this, hello? No? Oh, there we are. There's this talk about recession. It's all over the media, so let's start here. Is CBER projecting a recession?
Well, if you look at the chart, you can clearly see that we're not predicting a recession. That doesn't mean that there's not a recession risk. There is a recession risk. So if you look there, I would call that sort of slow growth, the economy slowing down, and if there is a bias in the estimate, it's probably to the downside. That is, we could slip a recession probably in late 2023 or into 2024 very easily. And what would cause that? Well, I hope to talk about that later. And the culprit's going to be what happens with the Fed. The Fed is the key player.
And I would just add something we changed in our forecast this year is we actually started adding into as a variable the federal funds rate as kind of helping to forecast this, as Steve is hinting, the Fed maybe caused recession if it does happen.
So if we look at last quarter, CBER was projecting negative GDP growth in the first quarter of 2023, and yet we're not seeing that any longer. What changed?
I think the model is reacting to the really strong numbers for real GDP that we got in the third quarter. And that's what changed it, is that the American consumer continues to be very resilient and above expectations, I would say, all year. And our model is gets put in there one way or the other, and is saying essentially that while low growth, as Steve said, and that there's certainly still within the bounds of possibility of recession, at the same time, we continue to defy expectations with how strong the American consumer has been. We just saw that with retail sales that came out yesterday, I believe.
And let me add that if there's some information out there about cash holdings of households, and that the households are still pretty cash abundant. It's only the bottom rung in the ladder. If your household income is under $28,000, cash has sort of disappeared. But for the upper four of the 5 quintiles on the upper side have lots of cash still. So the consumer is still driving things. Additionally, you'll notice that the forecast is higher growth in 2024 than we were predicting in the last time we met. And I think the reason for that is that the labor market is unexpectedly strong. That is, we still have, it's not 2 jobs for every person looking, but it's not too far under 2 jobs for every person looking for a job. So the strength of the labor market has sort of modified our forecast. And also, as we'll talk a little bit later, the strength of the labor market gives the Fed a little more breathing room. It's sort of like the picture of the lady in the commercial where the walls are closing in on both sides, and there's still a little breathing room for the Fed.
Yeah, and going to Steve's point on the labor market, the way I think the model's interpreting this, and we'll get to employment later, is that even if there is a slowdown in the economy, that the labor market is so tight right now that it might just kind of ease labor market concerns, and employers, because for all of you, it's been so hard to just recruit, retain, and your workers, there's less likely a chance of mass layoffs, at least in some of these industries that have been, like leisure and hospitality, that have been so tight.
And to fill in this conversation about labor, we don't have a slide on this, but the most recent JOLTS report, which is the Job Openings and Labor Turnover Survey, shows 10.7 million job openings nationwide. That's an incredible amount of jobs where we don't have people available to fill them. So when we say a tight jobs market, yeah, it's very likely that even in a recession, maybe employers would be slow to let their labor force go. Next slide. All right, so let's talk about the boogeyman. Let's talk about inflation. We love this one. Okay, so if you look here, you see that inflation has become a pretty significant problem, but looks like it might be slowing down. And so the question is as we transition to a slower economy and maybe some easing of inflation, is the Fed going to be able to engineer a soft landing, or are we going to hit a recession?
Okay, so I described the Fed as being between the rock and the hard place. So the rock is the inflation rate, and the hard place is a recession. And how do they manage to move the economy and reduce the inflation rate and do so without creating a recession? That's what our forecast is suggesting will happen. We see that the Fed has followed this past year an aggressive monetary policy of raising short-term interest rates, and through the term structure, this gets translated into the longer-term interest rates as well. And the hope is that this will slow down spending, because the Fed can control demand in the economy. They can't control the supply side. And it's worth noting at this point that some of the inflation problem we have is due to, supply chains. You've heard of supply chain, but it's real, and it is causing some of the inflation effect. So the Fed might have three outcomes that I can see. One is that they're too aggressive and we go into recession and the inflation rate comes down, or they're not aggressive enough and the inflation rate doesn't come down, or they hit it right in the middle and they end up with a soft landing. So the options are soft landing, hard landing, and delayed landing. And what the Fed is trying to do is to avoid a delayed landing, which the Fed experienced 2 or 3 times during the 1970s. I know that's before many of you were born. I actually lived through that. I remember when mortgage rates were double digit. Can you imagine a 14% mortgage rate? Go figure.
We might be about to. Okay.
I'm going to say, so Steve is maybe a little more the optimist in this situation. I'm a little bit more of the pessimist. And part of it, and I'll show this next slide, is, we have now a forecast from Moody's. Let's see if it shows up here. There it is. Yep. Okay, so we have a forecast from Moody's now for Southern Nevada inflation rate, CPI, the green arrow is where we're at now. And then we have a forecast from Trading Economics on the national inflation rate. And I keep seeing, when we've been monitoring this for over the year, that it keeps getting pushed back in terms of when are we going to hit peak inflation and start coming down. And I guess it's more of a sixth sense in this case that we probably have a long tail in terms of, yes, interest rates work, but as maybe Steve was hinting at, this delayed landing where things continue on, inflation continues to rear its stubborn head much longer than we all would hope it would, and that we're still talking about this next November.
No, that's not going to happen. We are in Vegas, and I'm not a betting man. I've not placed one bet since I came to Vegas, except driving my car on the highway. That was my only bet. But, the forbidden word, the transitory. This inflation is transitory. We can't use that word. Eventually, it's transitory. Eventually. And I think now is the time. The increase in the interest rates, when interest rates rise, that affects households. Their car loans, their credit card loans, their mortgages. It affects businesses. You need to borrow money for bridging the gap between your income and your expenses. It's going to cost you more. So it hurts the economy, and that drives down demand. So It's a time and tested relationship. You raise interest rates, eventually you'll lower the inflation rate. Now, there is some issue about the time lag. How long is it going to take? We see these forecasts are suggesting that it's going to happen over the next couple of years, and I think it will.
Well, this graph only goes out about a year, and it already shows inflation getting to a very tame number. So I'd like to remind everybody that we actually had San Francisco Federal Reserve President Mary Daly here just past May, and she tells us that they're going to engineer a soft landing. And when I seemed slightly skeptical, she doubled down. And so I think she's living in Fed's side of this, or Steve's side on this argument.
Or Fed's side.
Yeah. Okay, slide, please. Okay, so here's a survey that CBER did asking about inflation and what did we all think, and was it going to cause a recession or not? And 84% of survey respondents are expecting a recession. So here's the question. The second half of this survey also mentions that the Fed could cause a recession. So is inflation likely to cause a recession, or is the Fed likely to cause a recession?
Well, I think as it's hinting there, everyone's concerned about the Fed's moves and what they're doing, and does that cause the recession? We had comments this week from several individuals from the Fed, besides the Chairman Powell, kind of already setting the table that we're going to be seeing a softening in the employment situation here next year. Now, at the same time, consumers continue to defy expectations. Again, retail sales that came out yesterday. And so I can see why the anxiety from our business community is, are we going to end up in a Fed-caused recession? Because they're going to, like getting on the highway, they may have to slam on the brakes even harder to get safely merged into our long-run potential for growth, and that means causing recession to kind of tame inflation.
Steve, I'm hearing everyone talking about they expect a recession. Could people's expectations of recession and the change in their behavior actually create a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Oh, yes. If everybody thinks a recession is coming and they say, oh, I better cut back on my spending a little bit, I'll increase my saving just to be safe, then demand falls, and that pushes you into recession. It's like if you expect inflation is going to go up, and you say, oh, I better buy now. Demand goes up now, prices go up now, and inflation has moved forward. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's a lot of responsibility on us. We're not sure what to do. All right, so let's move to the next slide, please.
That assumes that people pay attention to what we say.
They are right now. All right, so let's look at the Southern Nevada labor market. So when I look at this, I'm looking, and here you're looking at unemployment and employment and what is the impact of the last few quarters with inflation and a strengthening versus a weakening economy. And if you look at that dotted blue line, or the solid blue line, that's unemployment projected forward. And one of the things I'm seeing here is I don't see a lot of problems. So talk to me how a recession, a potential recession, or at least a softening of the economy could affect the labor market in Las Vegas. Pardon me, in the greater Vegas area.
Well, if we did have a recession, the unemployment rate would go up. That's one of the things that people watch that you can
but
count
how
on.
much?
Well, maybe 2 or 3 or 4%. Not something that we want to contemplate.
Okay.
It looks like the unemployment rate is sort of stabilized at just under 5%. That's for Las Vegas, and for Nevada, it's in the mid 4%.
How much?
And nationally, we're under 4%. And in my 52-year career as a professor, I say to myself, 3.7% unemployment, that is unbelievable. That's really not normal. That's really low. Now, I know other people out there are saying, oh, but that unemployment rate misses out on people. There are 6 measures of unemployment, and this is what's called U3, and U6 is when you include people that are working less hours than they want to work. It also includes people who are just out of the labor market, would jump back in given a chance. that's usually 1.5 to 2 times the U3 unemployment rate. So if we're at 4.9%, then the U6, they don't report that number for Las Vegas. If I multiply two, that'd be 10%.
So how big did our unemployment become? How high did that statistic go during the past recessions?
Well, during the pandemic, it reached 30%, and then during the Great Recession, it reached 14% here in Southern Nevada.
So 13 and 30%, and we're predicting that if a pretty nasty, basically the worst case of the model, you're showing it could go from 4.7?
It'd be, 7.2% is on the confidence band, but in the model, it's 4.9.
Okay, so we've got a mean of 4.9, but the worst case scenario is about 7%.
But the worst case is not a financial crisis, Great Recession, or a pandemic recession. It's a more normal recession, which would not be as deep as those two.
More of a business kind of cycle correction.
Okay. Slide, please. All right, so let's talk about, here we go.
Housing?
Sure.
Housing is in a recession. Sorry, folks. Now's the time to earn your spurs. If you're a broker or a real estate agent, if you can survive this, you're a real person.
Okay. I heard someone say, next slide. But I do have a question about this. So I was looking at this graph the other day, and I noticed that we have a 1/4 negative GDP projection in the worst case scenarios, but a slowdown to be certain. But when I look at this, I see negative real estate prices for more than a year, for 2 years at the very least. Why does that persist for so long for such a short-term economic weakness?
I think our model's reacting, like as I mentioned, that we finally put in the federal funds rate, and so it's reacting and trying to look forward of what happens if, for example, we have an elevated federal funds rate for a longer period of time, say into 2024. And I also think it's reacting that when you look at that, it only looks like a bit of a hill, but you have to remember housing prices between 2020 and 2022 went up first like 27%, and then they went up 17%. That's pretty incredible. So the model is looking at that and saying that's maybe not unsustainable for the moment, and there's a little bit of a correction. Maybe it's not a little bit, but a correction. I will point out that the confidence bands when you get to 2024 are way out there, and we were actually talking about this late last night, the team internally, and so I don't know. The model seems to me almost to say it's confused in 2024, but in 2023, yes, I think we are going to have a bit of a housing price correction.
Yeah, 2024 looks like it belongs in a casino, not in an economist's presentation. All right, well, let's go to the next slide, and let's actually talk about gaming. All right. Although I did wonder, what did the wheel have to do with gaming?
It's a Ferris wheel.
Okay. All right. Anyone from Caesars will tell you it's not a Ferris wheel. It's an observation wheel. Okay. So over the past decade, and I've been coming to these for 20 years, and so for more than 10 years, we've been talking about Las Vegas diversifying away from gaming revenue into a more comprehensive entertainment experience and to offer a significant amount more than just gaming. I don't see gross gaming revenue weakening. How do we explain this?
I mean, I think first there's inflation has something to do with this, but I also think we can see that sports has, I think, really transformed the town and brought a new type of consumer in sports betting, et cetera, and that's bringing visitors. That's clearly buoying our gaming or travel and leisure industry. And I think we see that in these gaming numbers. Now, of course, the model is also then looking at the past and assuming that's the future. So it's assuming that the record amounts of gaming revenue that we've seen, I think 18 plus months now straight, will continue based on that past being prologue. But I also think having Formula One and Super Bowl is going to help buoy our industry here. And it's good that we built that stadium and that we're bringing in those tourism, that tourism and those events here.
And what's interesting about that is typically sports arenas are economic net losses for communities, and the studies have not been completed yet, and obviously it hasn't been here for long enough, but early data shows that this one is actually paying off for the community.
So, not to be a wet blanket, but keep in mind that gross gaming revenues is forecasted to diminish, go down. But to answer your first question about how can this be when they're trying to diversify into other areas, they did diversify into other areas. So the percentage of total revenue from gaming is way down relative to where it was in the past. But think of Andrew's pie. The pie is getting bigger, right? And if you have a fixed amount and the pie grows, then your percentage goes down. Exactly. I don't know if we're going to talk about this much more, but the last 4 or 5 months in Greater Vegas, almost didn't say it, in Greater Vegas, occupancy rates, gross gaming revenue, visitor volume, most of the variables that we track in the leisure hospitality sector have been going down. Not hugely so, but they've been trending down. And I suspect that's a result of what's going on nationally as well.
I think too, it's just correcting to a new equilibrium after kind of that spike after COVID.
Why don't we go to the next slide then? Because that's part of what this slide is about. We're talking about visitor volume. So let's talk about why we think visitor volume is going to be down a little bit.
So I actually think, again, I will maybe take the opposite of Steve on this, but I think the model actually is a little bit wrong here. And the reason is that we haven't had a Super Bowl and we have not had Formula One. And so the model doesn't know how to fit that in yet. Once we have it, then it corrects. That's why we do this every quarter. So that's why we put in there the confidence spans that are those light bars. And you can see that, yeah, it could go, it's going down as the mean, but you can also see it could easily go up above our record, which was over 42 million visitors, to 45 million visitor potentially in 23 and 24. I get the probability of that right now, getting to 45 million so quickly after the pandemic may be a bit of a long shot, but we do think by, we've said this in our outlook report, I think 2025 is when we see visitor volume hopefully returning to 42 million overall. We still think we're going to end at 38 million this year. And we have to see kind of how the events kind of turn out next year to kind of input that back into our model and see, does this need an updating? That's my take.
So you may be right, but I just think about this. So how many visitors relative to 42 million is that? What percent? How big a number is that? And also, how much crowding out is going to take place? People who would have come that particular weekend already, who now, because hotel room prices are shooting way up, decide they're not going to come.
Am I the only one who really enjoys when they disagree with each other?
Well, I would say I do agree that I think for the leisure traveler, with inflation and with demand, again, they continue to defy expectations. But if inflation's going to fall, that means demand has to fall as well. And so I do see that there probably will be some pullback from the leisure travel. But I also then keep seeing these numbers coming out of the hospitality industry on the hotel side that business travel is returning.
Hang on a minute. So here's what I'm interpreting for you. There's a little bit of lack of transparency going forward. Basic model shows that there is going to be a decrease in visitor volume, except for these unknowns that are coming, like Formula One, like the Super Bowl, and like a potential professional, unnamed Major League Baseball team, and a potential NBA team. These things could bring additional visitors, and like Steve was saying, that also might stop them from coming at a different time of the year. But we are running out of time, so I am going to stop this one and move us ahead. So looking at the clock, I'm going to put forward our last question. This got really negative really fast. And I know we have a few more slides behind this, but I don't think we're going to need them. So this got really negative really fast, if you see this graph. And we've already heard that it's possible that we could create a self-fulfilling prophecy in the form of a recession. So here's my question to you both. Steve, you said you've never laid a bet before, but here we go. What is the percentage likelihood of a recession in the next 12 months? Each of you, just give me a number.
I said 30%. I stick with it.
75%.
See how pessimistic he is?
Okay.
I think it will be more of a normal business cycle recession.
Well, so then let's start with the pessimist. Is a recession to be feared? As much as the last ones have been really scary and really damaging, is the recession that you're looking forward to, the 75% recession, the one that you're projecting, is it to be feared?
No, and I think this is why we have these conferences. If you know that at least things are going to be softening next year, I think for the next 6 to 9 months, you can prepare for that, right? And that's, again, I think what Ken is hinting at, too, is this self-fulfilling prophecy. If we all think it's going to be terrible, and we all pull back really quickly on spending, then that, yes, will cause a major recession. But if we all kind of prepare and say, yeah, in order for inflation to come down, demand has to come down, too, but we can still engineer a soft landing. If we all kind of plan ahead, think through our spending, our hiring, everything, then that, anyway, I don't think it needs to be feared.
So I'm just looking, and this is a test for the audience. Does this fellow look like Alfred E. Newman? Not too many old folk in the audience, okay. Your assignment, go look up Alfred E. Newman on the internet.
From Mad Magazine?
Mad Magazine, it's a great read.
So
go
ahead.
Any recession is not good. It's really bad. I guess it was, Harry Truman. And who was the other president? One was it? I forget who it was. One of them said that a recession is when my neighbor's out of work, and a depression is when I'm out of work. So if you're in a recession and you're out of work, it's a depression.
So to sum up what we've heard, and some of this is fairly somber information, is that there might be a recession next year, but certainly we're projecting a little weakness next year. At least a slower growing economy, but that's going to be tempered by a strong labor market, is what I'm hearing. And then one of the other comments I heard was consumer spending is likely to be tempered by people pulling money out of savings accounts. Is that accurate?
Right.
Wait, we agree?
We agree.
Hot damn. So with that, guys, that is the CBER view on what we think is coming from the economy. Definitely slower growth, but nothing really doom and gloom, right? So unless you're in real estate, in which case, like Steve says, it's time to earn your spurs.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Steve. All right, so let's give our panel and all our panelists applause. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for spending your morning with us. We're going to do this again in April, so I hope you'll come back and see our updated forecasts. And then we also, I mentioned Brews and Views. We are putting together the lineup, but January, I believe it's 18th, is going to be our next Brews and Views. That's what we put on the calendar for arts and entertainment. So I hope you'll make it out to that. And I also want to give one last shout out to all of our sponsors. Thank you for your support. Again, it really helps the center do what we do throughout the year. And I hope to see you back here in April. And thank you, everyone. Have a good day and stay warm.